Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm sharing 5 different dump and go crock-pot recipes. These are going to be perfect if you just need something quick and easy to throw in the crock pot. These are going to be the perfect dinners for busy weekdays. So I hope you'll enjoy today's video, and let's go ahead and get started. For this first recipe, I'm making a crock-pot chicken Alfredo, and this was a really good chicken Alfredo recipe. I've made a lot of them over the years, and this was definitely a favorite for us. So I just sprayed my crock pot and I added 2 frozen chicken breasts in there, and then I added 1 3/4 cup of heavy whipping cream, along with about 1.5 cups of chicken broth. And then I'm also going to be adding in a couple tablespoons of butter. I think I added like 3 or 4 tablespoons of just unsalted butter. Add those right in there, and then I've got a big scoop of minced garlic, probably about a tablespoon, along with a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper, and then I gave this just like a really quick stir together before adding in my cream cheese. For the cream cheese, you're going to want a 4-ounce block of cream cheese, and just go ahead and set that right on top. And then I cooked this on high for about 4 hours. Once it was all done cooking, I just shredded it with my hand mixer. You guys know this is my favorite thing to do. It works so well, especially with this recipe, how you have the cream cheese. This gets it really nice and mixed in so you don't end up with chunks in there. And then I added about probably half a cup of mozzarella cheese, 3/4 cup of some parmesan cheese, mixed that in there, and I just kind of let it all melt together, probably for like 20 minutes or so. And then I just served it over some pasta with some broccoli and a breadstick. This one was really delicious. For this next dinner, I'm making a vegetable beef soup. This is probably our all-time family favorite soup recipe. This is one I've been making for years. It's so good. You can make it on the stovetop too if you want, but I usually do it in the crock pot. So I'm just getting my ground beef browned up and ready to go. And I do typically add in my onion at this point just to make sure it gets nice and soft, or you can add it into your crock pot raw. It's just up to you. Also depends on how long you're going to be cooking it, but I usually will add in my onion with the beef, get that going, and then into my crock pot. Of course, I'm just going to spray that with a little oil before adding in the rest of my ingredients. Here I have a couple cups of peeled and chopped potatoes. I typically will use Yukon Gold if I have them. And then I've got a bag of frozen mixed vegetables. Just go ahead and dump that right in there. Then you're going to want to add in that ground beef and the onion mixture once it's fully cooked through before adding in the rest of your ingredients. So for garlic, I typically will use just like the minced garlic in a jar, but of course you can use fresh, or you could even sub it out for garlic powder. And then you're going to want a can of condensed tomato soup, a can of petite diced tomatoes. You can use regular if you want to. And then for salt, you're going to do probably like half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of dried parsley, half a teaspoon of dried basil, and then about a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, and then just like salt and pepper to taste. You can obviously add a little bit more or a little bit less, just depending on your preferences. And then you're going to want 2 cans of beef broth, or you can see I just use beef bouillon, mixed it into water and give it a quick stir. I typically will cook this for about 4 to 5 hours on high, but of course you can cook it on low for about 8 hours, and that should be about perfect as well. This is such a delicious soup recipe. I definitely think you guys will enjoy this one. It's definitely a favorite in our house. For this next dinner, I am making a sausage and scalloped potatoes. You could also do ham and scalloped potatoes for this one. But again, I'm starting off with my crock pot, spraying that with oil. I typically will use avocado oil in my crock pot, and it works really well. And then I'm going to get all of my potatoes sliced up. So I'm using Yukon Gold potatoes for this recipe. It's my favorite for scalloped potatoes. But go ahead and get those washed, peeled, and then you're just going to slice them into really thin pieces, probably like an 1/8 inch slices. Just get them really thinly sliced, and then throw those into your crock pot. And then you can see that I'm using some sausage here. You can also use ham if you want to, but I have tons of this sausage on hand, so I'm trying to get it used up, and just throw all of that into your crock pot. Now for seasonings, I've got a teaspoon of garlic powder in there, about half a teaspoon of pepper, and then you're also going to want, I added in about a teaspoon of salt, but I would actually recommend doing like half a teaspoon of salt. And then you're going to add a little bit of thyme and just a little bit of rosemary in there. And I also like to do a little bit of paprika. And then you're going to want a little bit of Parmesan cheese, probably like a third cup, half a cup. And then I added in a cup of cheddar cheese, and then I used up some Fiesta blend cheese that I had on hand too. But overall, you're going to want like a couple cups of some sort of cheese. I would definitely recommend like cheddar or something like that. I would not use mozzarella in this recipe. And then you're also going to want a half cup of sour cream. Now you will see that I added in 2 cups of chicken broth. Definitely only add in 1 cup of chicken broth. I actually ended up removing some of the liquid, and that's also why I said to do a little bit less salt, because obviously less liquid. But I will have all of the recipes in my description box, and you can look there for the exact measurements. But you're just going to give this a really good mix together, and then you're going to cook this on high for, I think I ended up cooking mine for probably about 4 hours on high, and it ended up turning out really well. Once it was done, I just topped it with a little bit of cheddar cheese, let that melt in there, and this was a really quick and easy dinner. My kids love this one. Definitely a crowd pleaser. Great crock pot recipe for the winter time. For this next recipe, we are making an Italian orzo soup. This is a really hearty soup, again, perfect for the fall or the winter time. So I'm actually just starting off with some ground pork in my pan here. Go ahead and get that browned up. I'm also going to be adding some veggies into this. So I've got about 1 small onion here. I've got 1 large pepper. I do like to use sweet bell pepper. And then I've got a couple carrots that I also peeled, and then I really thinly sliced them. I love the flavor of carrots in the soup. It just adds just a tiny bit of sweetness, but I'm just getting all of this cooked up together. Cook it until that pork is done cooking. Now once I have sprayed my crock pot with some oil, I'm just going to add in all of my ingredients. So I've got a jar of spaghetti sauce. You can use marinara sauce. You can really use whatever you want here. And then I'm gonna add in my chicken broth. I've got 2 cups of chicken broth, a big scoop of minced garlic, like a tablespoon, probably a teaspoon of dried Italian seasoning, half a teaspoon of basil seasoning, and then of course you're going to want a little bit of salt and pepper to taste. I think I did a teaspoon of salt and then half a teaspoon of pepper, and I feel like that was about right for this recipe. And then I'm adding all of that ground pork and the veggie mixture right in there, and I'm going to give all of this a stir together. I cooked this on high for about 4 hours. You could also cook it on low if you want to and just adjust the cooking time. But once it was done, I added in about a cup of orzo pasta. You can do like 3/4 cup if you want less orzo in there. It's just personal preference. But I stirred this right in there, and then I let it cook on high for probably like 12 minutes or so, 12-15 minutes. Just make sure you check it. Once your pasta is done, you're ready to serve it up. This was such a delicious and hearty soup recipe. For this next recipe, I'm making my favorite chili. This is pretty much the same recipe that I've been using for years now, with just a few little tweaks to it that I've made over those years. So I've got a pound of some ground beef here, and then I'm also going to be adding in my onion. I like to cook all of that together. You can use 2 pounds of ground beef for this recipe if you like a really thick, meaty chili. That's totally fine. Then we're going to head over to the crock pot and add in the rest of our ingredients. So I'm spraying that with some oil. I've got 1 can of kidney beans that I drained and rinsed off, and then I've got a can of chili beans, but don't rinse those or drain them. You can just dump the whole can of chili beans right in there. And then I have some carrots here. I know that's kind of weird, but I like to add in a couple of grated carrots for this recipe. It adds a little bit of sweetness without any sugar. I've also got 1 chopped bell pepper. This is just a green pepper. Mine was actually frozen. Just dump that in there, along with 2 cans of petite diced tomatoes. I do really like petite diced tomatoes for this one. And then I've got a can of tomato sauce, just like an 8-ounce can of regular tomato sauce, a big scoop of minced garlic, like a tablespoon. And then for the chili powder, I do about 1.5 tablespoons, and that's a pretty mild chili. You can of course add a little bit more if you want your chili to be a little bit spicier, but dump that in there. And then for other seasonings, I've got a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of ground cumin. I've got about 3/4 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of black pepper, and then you're also going to want a teaspoon of cocoa powder. I know that might seem really weird, but it actually adds a little bit of depth and richness to this chili. It's actually really good. Definitely let me know if you give that a try. I know the first time I tried it in the chili, I was like, this sounds really weird. Why would you add cocoa powder? But trust me, it's actually really good. And then I'm just adding that cooked ground beef right in there. Like I said, you can do 2 pounds of the ground beef if you really like meaty chili. So I'm dumping that in there, mixing it together, and I do like to add just probably a half a cup of water. You don't have to do that. If you like really thick chili, then just skip the water in this one. But I like just a little bit of thinness to my chili. And I cooked this on high for, I think I cooked mine on high for about 4 hours. Or you can do it on low for like 8 hours. It's just up to you. But I just top it with some cheese and sour cream. And this is such a delicious dinner. Guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed all of these crockpot recipes. If you want to see more of these crockpot dinners on my channel, I have a lot of these videos. I will have that playlist linked down below, so go check it out. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.